I feel you. When we box ourselves in, when we feel like we can't go any farther, it gets hard to do everything. Maybe you have worked yourself to the bone. You have been trying to share your podcast, you've been trying to share your message, and nothing hits the mark. You're stuck in your stats. You're wondering why you're not growing. You're wondering why Sally over there is doing so great when you know more and you have a bigger impact to make with your story. The thing is, this is what I just realized, is that sometimes something must die before we can move forward and rise to the next level. Leah brought this up last week, and it truly just made me realize that with podcast and podfade, yes, your story is a huge part of this whole thing, which is, again, why I wrote the book, why we rebranded the podcast to Your Podcast is Someone's Life Raft. But it's in conversations and community. And I want to share with you today a little bit more about the breaking down and the building of community and what happened at that speaking gig we were talking about last week. So last week, I was invited last minute to speak in front of people live for the first time ever. Yes, this podcaster left her podcasting office and went and spoke to a group of magical, amazing women. What happened was something that I could have never expected. And I was able to participate in the full weekend, and a part of me died there. And what birthed from it was so amazing. Now, you may say, Jen, you've gone off the deep end. I'm checking out. What the hell does this have to do with my podcast? It has everything to do with your podcast, because if you are keep bumping up against a wall, you're not growing, you're focused on different things, you're doing this, you're doing that, like whatever it is, it's going to make it hard. Maybe you're bumping up against this wall and it is because you're trying to be on all of the platforms at once. So, like I said on this podcast, we're still going to talk strategy and we're going to talk about storytelling, because I really want you to get the feel for why stories are so important and why stories sell and why stories build that know, like, and trust. And you're going to get a whole bunch of information in this podcast about why audio really seeps into our minds so much better than any other platform and why this is so much more intimate. So I walk into this beautiful location and I'm a little nervous. I get there the day before, the day I was invited. I got to spend the last half of the day with them. And I'm like looking around the room like, oh crap, there's some really powerful people in here. What does little old Jen have? And I know this is something you're probably struggling with too, because we all come across that. Who's going to listen to me? Why does it matter? And that really, that limiting belief, that circle talk in your head makes you pod fade away. My guess is a lot of that, percentage, what is it, like 85% of podcasters end up failing. Sadly, we want to change that here. But my guess is at that, I'm going to say at least 50% of that is the circle talk that we have that nobody's going to listen. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy, followed by that fear of visibility, which is something I'm truly working on. So I go to the first day event, then fast forward to the next day, going through all these beautiful conversations, watching these powerful medicine women like share their gifts, share their magic with us. And the person that was before me led us on this beautiful, I think it was meditation. I'm still relatively new to that world, but it was like a guided meditative journey. And it took so many people in so many different directions. You could feel the energy shifting, just like when you're having a conversation on a podcast. The tone, how you are, how you're showing up, it changes the energy and things. And at the end of it, I had gone through the meditation. Some things had come up. I was starting to see like my old self and where I was going, and this very structured strategy die. And I got up in front of all of these people and I was asked to share how to podcast, why podcasting, and stats of how to do this. I looked out in the room and I saw a bunch of people that had just been through a crazy meditation experience that had some really cool realizations of their life. And I was like, there is no way that I can spit stats to these beautiful women at this point. There was no way. So what I had to do was pivot again on the moment, last minute after last minute, and I'm rolling with the punches. At this point, I think I have 15 minutes to speak in front of these women. So I'm kind of rushing through my presentation about why storytelling is so great and how stories connect and the difference between telling a story on a podcast versus telling a story in person versus telling a story but through written word, and how there's this like deeper subconscious connection. And there's the fastest way to build a community is truly through podcasting. That has been the fastest way I built my community. If you look around on my social media, that I'm pretty not there. Not that I don't doom scroll every day, but I'm not really active over there. And I actually have a waiting list for my production, and I have enough referrals coming in that I'm relatively comfortable. And that's the power of just sharing my wisdom. So I want you to start thinking about your podcast and shifting it a little bit as I'm telling you this story, because I think that this might perk you up and reignite that fire. So as I'm standing there and I'm like, okay, about 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, the person who's helping run the event stands in the back and holds up a sign, you have 30 more minutes. And I looked around and I was like, guess what? You're stuck with me for 30 more minutes. And it was in that moment that I realized how much I love talking about the power of stories combined with the power of podcasting. And how it doesn't matter if there's 500 people in front of you, 200 people in front of you, 30 people in front of you, or two people listening to your podcast, you're still leaving a ripple. And as I'm up there, I've completely blacked out at this point because now I'm talking in front of a live audience and this is terrifying to me. But on the back end afterwards, the conversations I had, because I was willing to share my story, I was willing to be vulnerable. I went deeper and shared more about my story of my life before Costa Rica and some of the current things that are going on in my personal life with them. And what happened was true connection. So whether they wanted to have a podcast or they didn't, everyone wanted to have a conversation because the storytelling piece was so important. And why I'm sharing this with you is that that's a thing right now. Is there was like one person that raised their hand that they had a podcast, and there was two people that raised their hand that they never thought about it out of all of these people. Yet every single one of them connected to me sharing about podcasting because I shared it in a way that let them know that they should be amplifying their stories. There's something to take away. And I think that there's so many podcasts because I've been listening to random podcasts, some of them that are in like, the top 200 of Apple, just because I want to see like what's getting them up there. And some of them I'm very confused as to why they're top rated shows because they're like hour-long promos. So I invite you to think about your podcast as that stage. I want you to think about like, okay, tomorrow I got invited to speak on a stage in front of people, and it was, like, what am I going to talk about? And are you dreading it? Is there a place in your body that it doesn't feel good? And I want you to just like take a deep breath and sigh it out. And do that a couple more times and ask yourself, what is the core mission of your podcast? Like, I had forgotten the core mission of this podcast, which is still the cure for podfade, just has a new name. Same show, same fluffy show name. Again, strategy-wise, my name of both my shows is terrible. Absolutely terrible. Highly wouldn't recommend it because I'm working extra hard now to make sure that people understand what my show means. Highly don't recommend it as a strategist. But from a heart level, it feels so flippin' good. I don't give a crap. I will title my show, my episode titles so that people can find them. But what I want you to think is there a simple little tweak that's inside of the current podcast that you have that can make it more fun. Niche down, niche down, niche down. Yes. Yes, if you have a niche, you can grow faster. But you know what? When you end up with a micro niche of 100 to 200 to 300 to maybe 1,000 people in your space, and they are so micro niched, those are your exact people, you can have better results than those people that have hundreds of thousands of useless downloads that are listening for 30 seconds or less and then bored because there's like 50 million promos. So I really want you to start thinking about this as you're going through your show. What needs to die in order for there to be space to move forward? The same with repurposing. We have gotten to this place where we want to record once and then we want to repurpose. I do the same thing. And I do it in my production company all the time. And does it work? Yeah, kind of. But what I found being the most work is when you don't repurpose, you repurpose the theme, quote unquote, but you don't repurpose the actual content. So, like for me, I might take what I've learned from my own conversation in this podcast episode, and I might record a face to camera video for my YouTube shorts that isn't pulled from this. I might make it look like it's pulled from this, but it's going to be like that quick hit. Because we're not a constant 30-second promo reel. We're not a constant 60-second YouTube short. We have conversations. It's more conversational. That's power of podcasting, is it's more conversational and you're catching people through a meditative state, which you will learn about later this month. Because I've brought on subconscious strategists to share with you why audio is the way to subconsciously connect with your clients and your audience even better, which builds that know, like, and trust faster. So again, the strategy here, if you want the actionable strategies, like look at your podcast. If you are regretting and you are just like hesitating and you're procrastinating and you're not doing it, is there a simple tweak to put the fun back in it? Like I keep fighting bringing back my live launch program. I love my live launch program. It's, 30 to 60 days, depending on how long, which one you want to go into. Whereas as a group, we launch our shows. So you have people to support back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm like really excited about that. And I always do a workshop to go into it because I want everybody to at least have the foundations in the live launch. So whether you're ready for a rebrand to relaunch or you're ready to launch, come join the workshop. The workshop starts on the 26th of this month. It's gonna be freaking amazing. And the workshop is like, when you look at the price of the workshop, you're gonna be like, oh my goodness, Jen. Now the live launch, the actual long group program, of course, is like another step. But what happens is sometimes that foundational piece is all you need to fix. It's that foundation that's making you bored. You have put yourself in a box, podcaster, and that box doesn't feel good. And that's what happened to me. If you're multi-passionate and crazy and wild and just like can't stay in one lane, you sometimes have to pivot, but find that little connection piece. And that's where I'm magical. It's finding that little connection piece. That's what I do the majority of the time on my free podcast CPR audits, podcastcpr.com. They're still free. They won't be forever. But that's what the core piece is everybody's always bored and they're like, I can't talk about this. I don't want to have a bunch of interviews. I want to be the center of attention. How can I do this? It's like finding that core piece of like, okay, you know what? Podcasting is one of my branches. Storytelling is one of my main branches. But what does it all come down to? It's building community. That's my core message, is building community through podcasting, through storytelling, inspiring to leave an impact on the world. And make some income, because you got to make income to make a bigger impact. So as I spoke at that event, I realized in that moment when I had to stand up there and pivot and I couldn't just spit the strategy, which is so safe for me. Because strategy is safe. It's not like woo-woo. It's a matter of a fact. It's black and white. Here's the strategy. When you start going into these other lands, it gets a little bit more mushy. Well, more Gucci. There's a lot of shades of gray. Lots and lots of shades of gray. And that those shades of gray scared me. But it also is what's empowering me because that means that each and every individual has their own story, has their own way, and that's what I love doing is finding those little tiny tweaks that make it yours. So if you're on somebody else's strategy and you're trying to promote on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest, you're writing LinkedIn articles, you're writing blog posts, I mean, holy crap, no wonder you're tired. Is any of it working? It's time to like stand up on that stage, whether it's a real stage, a not stage, and just go. And what would it be you're talking about? What are those little tweaks? And that's what this podcast is here for. Your podcast is someone's life raft, and it could also be your own. I know my podcast was my own life raft, saved my life. I would not be talking to you today if I didn't have a podcast and my dog. But other than that, like, and I joke because I'm still uncomfortable sharing that part of my story and that part of my journey. But I invite you to really start thinking about like, how's your podcast? And how's your podcast change your life? How's it change your journey? What's not feeling right? How can we shift this a little bit? And like I said, I've got my low cost workshops that are once a month. I've got my free CPR audit. That's 30 minutes with me, coaching. It's not a sales call. I use it as market research. And in getting market research, I help you, podcastcpr.com. And I'm really excited for both of these things. I don't talk about my promos enough. Again, it's a fear of visibility. So what is it that could make your podcast more exciting again? I really want to know. Like, let's hang out. I'm most active if you want to hang out with me on social media. Let's be real. Facebook. If it's not on Facebook, and you hit me up on Instagram, just know I'm not very quick at getting back to you because I'm not there all the time. But I will get back to you. That being said, I invite you to take the time to really look at your podcast and how it fits into your business, how it fits into your life, and what the topic is of it, and see if that's something that actually excites you anymore, or if you have grown out of your topic. I grew out of just strategy because as I get stronger in myself, as I reclaim myself as Jen, as Jennifer, and I stand in my own power, I realize that teaching strategy, teaching tech, teaching all those things, I am fantastic at it. I can make your life easy. I can make you have, an AI podcast VA in no time. But what didn't feel safe to me was teaching you my actual true gifts, which is being able to see everything you have to offer and creating something that's cohesive for a multi-passionate brain, and how to use podcasting to move that forward, and how to create a content plan that actually feels good to you, where it's not just a bunch of repurposed content that nobody cares about. Having a long form content is a magical thing. Sharing your story in someone's ear when they're not paying attention to anything else and they're doing something that's meditative, there's no deeper connection other than having a heart to heart with somebody one on one, because that's basically what you're doing. And to most of you, you're doing it in the shower. How more intimate do you want that to be? So I invite you to take a step back before you stop, before you pivot, and just see, what is it you truly want? How do you want to leave an impact? Where do you want to go? And that's what I have for you today. So I look forward to seeing you soon. Have the most magical day, and I will talk to you later.